Hello chess fans, in today's video I want to share a game I played in a recent tournament, and the tournament was a over the board tournament, and I managed to win the tournament with 3.5 out of 4 points, and in doing so I managed to take down the defending champ, which is this game right here, and it's the highest ever person I've ever beat over the board, and I thought it was a very nice opening against the French, which a lot of people struggle with, so I thought I would share the game. So I started off with e4, and I saw the French d4, d5 here. And so here I decided to play knight c3. And the reason for playing knight c3 is I knew my opponent would pretty much play only knight f6. But against knight d2, they had the chance of playing c5 because what I feel like about the winnower is that to play the winnower, you have to know a lot of lines because it's very complicated. And I really didn't think my opponent knew that many lines to play this complicated line. While to play c5 against here, it's pretty simple. Like you just, after c5, takes, you play the IQ piece. So I feel like playing knight c3 here was better, and you might ask, like, wait, these are just different openings, but the way I was going to play it, it's just going to transpose. So my opponent plays knight f6, e5, knight fd7, f4, c5, and here I play knight c2. So pretty much this would be the same after c takes, knight takes, this would be the same position as if I went knight d2, knight f6, e5, knight fd7, f4, c5, and then here the main move would be c3. But I've always been a fan of this line, and after c takes, knight takes, this would be an exact transposition to what occurred earlier with knight here, knight here. So it's just depending on what I wanted to allow. So I played here, takes, takes, and knight c6. And already here, white is pretty much significantly better. I would say that you shouldn't really get rid of the tension too early. This is 100% playable, and it's one of the lines that you can play, but knight c6 just seems to make a little bit more sense, and then here, white can choose between here and c3. And this line is a favorite of Vishwanath Anand. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but he played this against Shirov a few times, and I saw it from there, and, well, it seems to still hold up in today. It gives white a slight advantage, as opposed to where you play knight f3, knight c6, bishop e3, and then here black has queen b6, they have bishop e7, they have c takes d4, they have a6, like they have a lot of lines here, which I don't feel like is necessary to learn. So I play knight c2, takes here, knight gf3, knight c5, and the idea of knight c5 is, in pretty much all Frenches, black wants to play f6. But black can't play f6 now because I take on e6. And he can't go knight takes because then, he hasn't got rid of the threat on e6. So black really has two ideas here. Either to go bishop c5, queen b6, and just put pressure on the knight, try to get the knight to move to play f6, or to instead just play knight c5 to defend e6 and then prepare f6 at some point. So now after bishop e3, you might be wondering why they don't play f6 here, and I'll just turn on the engine for this one for some help. Okay, yeah, they have problems with the knight on c6 immediately. So that's why my opponent first played bishop d7, which I think is a pretty smart move. I played bishop e2, and here again I think f6 is a little bit too quick because you can take, and yeah, you just have weak squares in the center. But it's always a good idea to see when this is possible and see when you can try to get away with f6. Here, I mean, maybe the center is a little bit too open. Maybe you should have kept the c5 pawn there and played f6. All right, but bishop e7, castles. And here, pretty much unanimously, the general plan and advice for white is to play c3, play like queen d2 or queen e1, and try to attack on the king side, maybe with queen g3, or maybe with like playing the g pawn up and bringing the queen this way. But here I decided that since I was able to get away with bishop e2 and castling, most of the time the engine says that you have to play c3 first, but I was able to get away with, not playing c3. I thought an interesting alternative is c4, which is what I played in the game. And this move, I feel, just gives white a really easy advantage, and already here my opponent was really disgusted with their position. So here my opponent took. It's probably a better idea to take here, but my opponent, I guess, was recently thinking he's going to trade this knight for this knight, and when this knight is gone, then the bishop can come here in some positions. So I think it was a pretty reasonable assessment to trade the knights. So then takes here. If you allow this take, you're just certainly lost. And if you go bishop here, after takes bishop f3, I think the position is really beautiful for white. Black just has weaknesses all over the board. We have the d4 square, and we have the bishop pair. So he took, takes, queen b6. I think queen b6 is a little bit of a bad move because he wants to connect his rooks, obviously, But he can't connect his rooks without moving the queen. So he has to move the queen. And the queen doesn't really have anywhere good to go. On c7, it could be hit by rook c1. On b6, as we see in the game, there's tactics with moving this knight and the bishop see each other. So here, I can't do the tactics immediately maybe because the bishop's hanging. And also this pawn is hanging. So how do you solve both problems? If anyone said bishop c1, like, obviously that's not the move. It's queen e2. They're dealing with both problems. And here my opponent, I think, realized correctly the danger of his position. I think a better move here would have been a5, but this is hard to play allowing this. I think rook c1, and then after knight b3, there's all sorts of threats on this knight because of the pin. And so my opponent played a sad move, queen c7, which, keep in mind, the engine doesn't even hate this move. The engine says this is one of the top moves. So that's already showing the really badness of his position. I played rook ac1, a5, so obviously here I'm threatening to play, like if he goes a6, I play b4, knight wherever, and then I win the queen. Or I could even take on e6 and not win the queen, just get a material. And yeah, here his knight would be trapped. So he has to play a5 to solve b4. And then here I was really proud of my next move. So just think about what move here would make the most sense. Keep in mind that this is aligned here and that there might be some future tactics on this knight. There might be some way to increase the pressure. Maybe you're supposed to do development. So just think about this here because this is a really good exercise for any player like in the amateur level. So here, the move I played, which is the engine's favorite move, I think, let me just check, is the move, yeah, it is, bishop d3. And now you might say, wait, what's the point of this move? First off, the bishop is pretty much always placed on d3 in the French. And I was floating with ideas like if rook c8, sometimes I can go check here, and here. This doesn't work, of course, because I think he has f5. And then if I go rook h3, they have this square here, and they can escape. But at least there I would have a perpetual. I think this position, yeah, it's dead equal. I have a perpetual. So I was flirting with those ideas. But I was also thinking of ideas of going bishop b1 and queen c2. And then this would have a double attack on this. And then I could go like knight b3 and attack this as well and attack this. And I was also thinking about rook lifts first maybe to try to make it work. So here it has a lot of aggressive ideas. And it also opens up the rook. So it makes two pieces better. A move you could consider is this rook here. But it's unclear. Like, do I want the rook over here? Do I want the rook on the c file? It's better not to commit to these things too early if you don't know where your pieces are going. But I know my bishop wanted to be on d3. So my opponent went f6. f6 is a blunder because you're not supposed to go f6 in this position because you just will get a weakness after takes. But also, I think it's not really in your best interest to open up the position when your bishops are so terrible like here. It's like if we had a Sicilian Scheveningen, the reason why it's good is because the center can't be opened usually. Because these bishops would be bad if the center was open, if these pawns were gone. So takes. Here, I went knight b3. And the idea of knight b3 was just to give him a weakness here. And after b6, my opponent didn't play this actually, which is kind of funny. After b6, I would have, I think it's, takes. And if he takes with a bishop, takes, queen e4 with the fork on the two sides of the board. And I'd calculated something like this. I was planning to just take. And after take, I was planning to go queen c2 with a double attack. But I think I probably would have found this because I was in very good form in the tournament. So my opponent went rook c8. And just take 2 seconds here maybe. Most of you should see it within 1 second to see what the best move for white here was. I was shocked when I saw rook c8 on the board. Obviously such a strong player making such a simple blunder was pretty lucky for me, as it also helped me win the tournament. So yeah, here I just took on c5. My opponent took back and I took with the rook, and yeah, I'm just up a piece. But just keep in mind that this position was already around here, was already plus 2.5. So the opening was a resounding success for me. And yeah, I was pretty much out of book on pretty much here. I didn't know much past this. I just knew that pretty much Anand has played this. And especially after this, I've never seen this move before. So yeah, it was very nice to get such a huge opening advantage against such a strong player. And then be able to just convert it after they make a simple blunder. Obviously, they were probably pretty tired from the rest of the tournament. They'd won all their games. And here I took on c8. We saw bishop takes c8. And here I went queen c2. I'm just going to go over the conversion because it might sound weird. The game was in 45 minutes. But I spent around 15 minutes on the conversion. Maybe 10 minutes, something like that. Because I also am pretty bad at conversion. So I just wanted to make 100% sure I was allowing nothing. and that I was calculating everything correctly. And yeah, obviously this position is +9. Like, it's completely winning. I'm just up a piece. But you have to prove it. So here, they went bishop d7. I went rook d1, so I'm threatening check, and then to take the second bishop c6, and here I took. You might ask why I don't take right away. It's just, I think it just transposes after this, rook d1. But I wasn't thinking that much here. Went bishop b4, off for a trade, takes. Queen c7, rook c1 to not allow the queen on the open file. Queen d7, bishop d4. I didn't want the queen to get any checks at all. Bishop f5. And here I probably should have gone bishop e3 because queen d2 I was worried, but I have queen c2. And I think the queen just has to go back, and then I'd have like queen c8 and then like queen here or something like that to threaten this mate. But I went bishop c3, patrolling all the squares, not letting any counterplay at all. So the queen covered all the squares. They went rook d5. I went rook e1, threatening to take this pawn. And the only way to defend the pawn, because if they go here, I think pretty simply winning is like... What move is simply winning? Queen g6 is probably simply winning. And I wanted to play something like... something around takes here. Maybe this is not so simple. Yeah, oh, maybe I play f5 actually after that. So that I could take here with the rook. But... that's what I expected, but they played rook d1. I took, blocked my queen g4, g3, king g8. I went queen e5. Yeah, here I went queen e5. So see if you can calculate if your opponent has a perpetual after queen e5, because obviously I'm allowing some checks on the light squares. So I allow this check. So see if you can calculate, is there a way to get out? I mean, I obviously played it and I won this game, so there should be a way to get out. But I spent like, I think like a minute and a half here just calculating that I could get away and then win the game. So I play queen e5. And obviously if my opponent just goes back, I'm just going to take here. Takes, and I'm up 2 pawns. This is a much easier endgame to win. I think the most classy way to win this is to go g4 and the king has no entry. So my opponent went queen d1, king g2, queen c2, king h3, queen h7, queen g4, queen g6. And here I had predicted that I would have... queen g5, and it's a pretty easy win. So here my opponent went queen f7. And yeah, here, I don't know what came over me, because in the other position I saw I would just take here, sack my queen, but I was like, okay, I want to collect one more pawn. So let's just go h4, and then if he plays a nothing move, then I can sack. And this looks like a much easier win to me than the other position, because now this pawn goes up, and then I take this. But then my opponent played e5. I took with the bishop, queen e6, king h5, queen f7 here. And you might ask, is it really necessary for your king to go like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way up the board? And I was like, okay, yeah, it is, because I can always block. Queen d7. Also notice that here you can still fall for tricks. For example, if you take with the queen, I think check here is still winning, but just why would you allow so much checks? Because if you go back, then they have check here, and now I have to block with my queen, and then they have check here, and now I'm not threatening mate anymore. So it was accurate to take with the bishop, and then after this position, my opponent resigned. So this is my highest rated victory ever. Let me know if you want to see the rest of the games from this tournament. I don't think many of them were too good, but if you want to see them, obviously I'll deliver on them. And if you like this video, please remember to leave a like and subscribe. And the final thing I want to say is after this tournament, my rating should be around 2090, which is, like, obviously excellent. I'm very happy to get a rating like that and should get me closer to getting a title. So maybe I can finally get a title, and then we'll put maybe the title in our YouTube username. But I'll see you guys in the next one.